Justice Samuel Alito and these flags, he seems to think it is pretty clear that there needs to be a discussion about recusal for Justice Alito. Where do you stand?
There's no circumstance where Justice Samuel Alito should be permitted to preside with respect to any case that has to do with the January 6th violent insurrection. He absolutely should recuse himself. He has disqualified himself in terms of either the appearance of impartiality or actual impartiality.
So how do you get him to reconsider? How do you get the Chief Justice to get him to even consider this?
This is part of the challenge that we confront with the runaway Supreme Court that appears to want to conduct itself as if the judiciary is above the law. Now, for years, members of Congress in both the House and the Senate have indicated that it's time for the Supreme Court to have an ethical code of conduct that is enforceable. Last year, Chief Justice Roberts did implement a code of conduct, but it appears to be voluntary and is being ignored. And so as a result of that, the first opportunity that we have in the Congress, I believe we need to have a real conversation about a legislative effort to implement an ethical code of conduct on the Supreme Court that is enforceable. They are the only branch of government currently that can operate with impunity. Congress has an ethical code of conduct enforceable under law. The executive branch has an ethical code of conduct enforceable under law. We've got to get the MAGA extremists on the Supreme Court under control.
So just to be clear, when we're talking about these flags, one of them was the upside-down American flag. It was flown outside of his Virginia home in January 2021 after the insurrection, while the court was considering a case regarding the election. Justice Alito says his wife was the one that flew it and that it was in a dispute, done in a dispute with one of the neighbors. The other flag was the Appeal to Heaven flag. It's a flag of a pine tree, and that's been co-opted by Stop the Steelers as well, the religious portion of the Stop the Steelers. There's been no comment about this flag. This was flown outside of his New Jersey, vacation home multiple times, according to the New York Times, in 2023. These are the two flags at question here. When Republican senators are asked about this, they don't see that they're a big deal. They'll say that this is overblown in the media. Do you see any innocent explanation for the flying of these two flags at two separate homes during two separate periods?
Do not see any non-nefarious or innocent explanation. And if there is one, we haven't heard it from Supreme Court Justice Alito. It's not been forthcoming. I think his only response was to try and throw his wife under the bus, which was extraordinary in and of itself for anyone to do, let alone a Supreme Court justice, who, by the way, is having to deal with pending cases before the Supreme Court that involve the insurrectionist in chief, Donald Trump, involve people who violently assaulted the Capitol as part of the effort to undermine the peaceful transfer of power for the first time in American history. And that is why this is a serious issue. Part of the challenge that we confront at this moment is that the extreme MAGA Republican majority in the House of Representatives has zero interest in exercising any oversight authority over the out-of-control members of the Supreme Court, which is one of the things that will be before the American people on the ballot in November.
If the Democrats retake control of the House, if the American public puts Democrats in control of the House, and say the American public allows Democrats to maintain control of the Senate, say the American public also allows Joe Biden to keep the White House, would you plan on doing something regarding Justice Samuel Alito, potentially trying to impeach him?
Well, let's not put the cart before the horse. The first step would be to make sure that we engage in aggressive oversight to get an understanding of what's happening, why it's happening, and how we can stop this extremist behavior from ever happening again. The challenge right now is that even the Senate Democrats, though they are in the majority, has the inability or does not have the ability, I should say, to enforce subpoenas and try to ascertain and obtain information because Republicans in the Senate have the ability to block it because there is a 60-vote threshold with respect to subpoena enforceability. And of course, under Chairman Jim Jordan and the chair of the Oversight Committee, and we see what a mess oversight has been throughout the entirety of this Congress, they have zero interest in trying to rehabilitate the credibility of the Supreme Court. We're going to have to step into this situation.
It's not just Justice Alito, it's also Justice Thomas that has serious questions surrounding him regarding billionaire funding and lavish vacations, what he's taken from people who have arguments in front of the Supreme Court. He's also taken positions recently regarding our institutions. In the overturning of Roe v. Wade, he brought up Obergefell and gay marriage, and suggested that he'd want to take another look at that. There's also now questions about him potentially wanting to take a look at Brown v. Board of Education. What are your feelings about Justice Clarence Thomas?
Well, Justice Clarence Thomas has long lost his credibility in terms of an impartial figure or someone who is interested in the principles of liberty and justice for all or equal protection under the law. It's important for the American people to understand that if Roe v. Wade can fall, anything can fall. Social Security itself can fall. Medicare can fall. The Affordable Care Act can fall. Democracy can fall. Brown v. Board of Education can fall, as Justice Thomas made clear in his concurring observation and opinion yesterday. So everything we care about is going to be on the ballot in November, including getting the federal judiciary into a place where it can actually administer the law and make decisions in a fair and impartial fashion, not lead an ideological effort to jam their right-wing views down the throats of the American people.
Alito Jeffries, if Justice Alito does not recuse himself and he's part of the court that rules on former President Trump's immunity case, which is set to come out any day now, and say that it gets kicked down to the lower courts and it's Justice Chutkan that now has to go through where the presidential immunity lies, is that going, in your opinion, to degrade the confidence in the court?
Well, the court has done a lot over the last several years to degrade public confidence in the institution. And, that's quite unfortunate because we need a fair and impartial judicial branch as part of our constitutional architecture. And a handful of these MAGA extremists who are on the Supreme Court have pushed things too far in an extreme direction. I think we just have to continue to encourage the American people that at the end of the day, who they elect as president, who they elect into the United States Senate will help determine the future fate of the United States Supreme Court. And based on the view that the public lacks confidence in the Supreme Court, I'm hopeful that that will be a factor in November when people go to the polls.
Alito Jeffries, Al Sharpton, good to see you.
I want to tell AOC.
It is truly what you would call living rent-free inside somebody's head. Literally.
AOC.
Oh, here we go. What's up? What's up?
He loves it.
He does love it.
This morning, she intended to become a prophet.
Oh, it's because
And
it was
she
raining
said-
this morning, and I said, God is good.
Even God doesn't want
He's
to
a pastor.
Let's establish one thing. AOC is so dignified and respectful, it's untrue. If it had been the other way around, and a MAGA person just being the brunt of every single line, it was like a Trump version of the Bronx. They were playing some type of AOC bingo. How many times can you say AOC? Every question had to be mentioned AOC. She's just so respectful. Helicopter's going over. Literally. She's just so respectful as she is speaking and doesn't really... Literally, when you finish. Doesn't really let any of it rise at all. Just incredible. And here's the other thing. Excuse the cliche, but she clearly lives rent-free in so many people within the MAGA world.
My life, I've seen New York through good times and bad, through boom times and crime waves, through market crashes and terrorist attacks, but I've never seen it quite like this. Get me the snake, please. The snake. African American jobs were the best in history. Asian American, the best in history. Hispanic, the best in history. Women, people with the first president in 78 years that didn't start a war. We had no wars. None of these stupid wars. Such a shame. Do they have that? Do they have it? We have lost respect all over the world. We were the most respected country in the world 4 years ago. We were respected more than our country was ever respected 4 years ago. Our subways are squalid and unsafe. The ceiling tiles are falling down, and they look worse than a third world country. The medians of our highways are crumbling. Our sidewalks are littered with garbage, bottles, and trash. But worst of all, the discarded needles from people that so desperately are in need of help. And we have mobs of migrants fighting our police officers and giving America the middle finger. Like it or not, this is a rally. This is as far as the eye can see. You have to see the lines outside. They're going for miles. Because I called up this morning. Do the people like me or do they hate me?
I'll be honest with you, maths is not my best subject, but even I can count. And 25,000 people in the park. Okay.
Offering to demand law and order in our inner cities, restore peace around this world. And that's a message that all Americans can get behind. And that is why you saw more than 25,000 people.
Sorry to stop it there. I would love just one person to say, how confident are you the figure is 25,000? Would you put your house on it? Would you even put, I don't know, $1? 20? Seriously. Anyway.
More than 25,000 people show up in the deep blue Bronx tonight, bringing the same energy and enthusiasm that we felt a few weeks ago in deep blue New Jersey, where more than 100,000 people showed up to hear from.
We were going to put up within a period of 3 weeks. It was all built, laying there, ready to be put up, designed by the Border Patrol, who are incredible people, ICE, who are incredible people, all together. I wanted to put up concrete plank for the contractors here. They didn't want it. They had to have hardened steel. They wanted 6,000, 7,000 pound concrete. They wanted rebar in the middle. They wanted different materials, harder to cut. So we had very hard steel, very good stuff. Everything was good. We had the panel on top. It was called an anti-climb panel. We had the best wall. And it was going to bid. We were going to add 200 miles of wall. It would have taken about 3 weeks. And then we had the rigged election. And you know what happened after the rigged election? They took the wall, and instead of putting it up, they sold it for 5 cents on the dollar.
Let me be the first person to tell an unoriginal joke. The meth gala needed a doctor. Unfortunately, the parallel universe that Dr. Ben Carson inhabits is not
exactly right. It has to be results driven. I don't know if you saw what happened in the South Bronx today. It was very moving. People from all races, all creeds and colors gathering there, thousands of them to listen to Donald Trump. Here's just a little taste, and you can react. Watch.
From the very first day that we take back the White House, I believe we are going to have the 4 greatest years in the history of our country.
I would love, just love, some of these people who turn up to the meth gala to, well, hear their views on certain policies and how they're going to solve, I don't know, everyday situations that affect the folks in the Bronx. Facts and figures, by the way. Sorry to be a party pooper, but the park only holds 3,500 people. Just putting that fact out there, because facts are not something they really bother with, folks.
It was loose. It was crazy.
Yep. Yeah, I think they're regretting keeping him in that Manhattan courtroom. He ends up in the Bronx with 25,000, 30,000 people.
A terrible thing to say, but I believe it. Many of the hostages that you're waiting for and everybody's waiting for, those hostages, many of them are dead. Many of them are dead. And it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing. But many of those hostages are dead. And that's why when you see these negotiations where Hamas is like not getting back, they're saying, man, we could make a good deal, but these people are no longer alive. When I saw the way they were treated, when I saw the way they were thrown into the cars and how horribly they were treated, there's no way that those hostages, and some will be alive, but many of those hostages are dead. It's a very serious, horrible thing. It would have never happened if the election weren't rigged. It would have never happened if I...
Long story short, there's a show on British TV called University Challenge where they get the most intelligent people to go through a series of different questions. And they always say, your starter for one is, okay, so we'll do that now. Your starter for one is, what word are we looking for here? What word, please?
Hardworking, patriotic, and this is some... Hardworking, patriotic, and this is some...
Well, I'll tell you it won't make a difference at all, Jake, and that is for Donald Trump to be the ringleader of and invite all his clowns to a place like the Bronx. New York will never, ever support Donald Trump for president. We know him better than anyone, and that means we understand what he's all about is just for himself. So this state will go solidly behind Joe Biden for president, as it has in the past. So he wants to spend his time doing these made-up fake rallies and pretending their support here. Be my guest, because while you're doing that, Donald Trump, Joe Biden's out there on the other side making sure he's delivering for all Americans. And so go ahead, spend all your time you want in New York, because we'll be with Joe Biden, and Joe Biden's out there winning over the rest of the battleground states.
New York hates you.